Have you noticed how politicians in the Western Balkans tend to frame every single major policy challenge in terms of progress on the road to joining the European Union? It's as though membership in the EU is not just a strategic goal that all of these countries have set, but more like the ultimate purpose of everything our governments do. Let me give you an example from my own country. In Montenegro, everyone is talking about the need to combat the powerful drug cartels and the need to prosecute cases of high-level corruption, especially corruption in the judiciary and the police force. And yet even this kind of stuff that's supposed to be self-evidently a matter of national interest, gets talked about by our political elites almost exclusively in terms of getting to finally close chapters 23 and 24 of our accession negotiations with the EU. Which makes it seem as though having less crime and corruption around is really all about us being able to join some kind of club, as opposed to, having less crime and corruption around. And you'll encounter this way of framing the most pressing issues of the day as you listen to politicians all throughout the Western Balkans. So why is this an actual problem beyond semantics? Well, one of the main insights of discourse theory is that the way we speak about things, the way we frame the concepts and relations that make up our view of what we call social reality actually ends up constituting that reality. And this of course applies to the domain of politics and power structures. Now, power is not a property or a thing that someone wields in the way that a Harry Potter character would wield a magic wand. Power is in fact more like a relation that obtains between subjects. And that relation, that power relation, can never be reduced to being an expression or an offshoot of something deeper and more fundamental, like a relation of economic dependency or military superiority. Power is instead, in large parts, constructed and reproduced in discourse. So when we try to give an account of a certain power dynamics that we observe, we're never merely describing what is already objectively there, but instead we participate in constructing that power dynamics by our very act of speaking about it. So how does any of that relate to our political situation in the Western Balkans? Well, you might have heard it said that the status of the Western Balkan states in relation to the European Union is effectively that of protectorates of a modern-day empire, meaning that these countries' ability to retain a measure of autonomy in running their own affairs has been severely compromised by the demands of European integration. And you can find, of course, evidence of this claim in practically every domain of governance, from foreign policy to energy policy, education policy, public administration reform, social issues, even constitutional matters. Policymakers in the Western Balkans are generally expected to comply with the advice and recommendations of EU institutions far more than it is the case in any EU member state. And what's more, our elected representatives in the Western Balkans regularly act as though the bureaucrats in the European Commission must automatically have a much better grasp of how to solve our country's problems than we do. Now, if this rings true, then I propose to ask, how exactly did our countries get themselves into this kind of position? Namely, how much of this power relation that we're currently in vis-a-vis the EU was unavoidable, something that you might say we've signed up for the moment our countries decided to conclude their respective stabilization and association agreements with the EU. So how much of it is just legally preordained, and how much is politics, a result of our own political conduct over the years? So here's the question. Looking at the current state of affairs, have our own political elites in the Western Balkans inadvertently contributed to getting us into this neo-colonial power relation with the EU by speaking and acting the way they do, by consistently framing all of the major political issues in our countries in a way that perpetuates a power dynamics in which we construe ourselves as being inherently barbarian, unable to govern ourselves, with minimal competence, without oversight from a benevolent Western master, so that the path towards joining the EU becomes, in our minds, not just an objective that we pragmatically judge to be in our strategic interest, but something deeper and more fundamental, something like the road to civilization itself, and as such, the ultimate purpose of our country's existence. And if that is at least part of the problem, then if we wish to change things, if we indeed wish to decolonize our current power relation with the EU, should we not first of all try to decolonize our own thinking about the EU? That's food for thought. And if you have any insights that you'd like to share, I invite you to leave a comment below.